Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, starring Chris Pine, Kevin Costner, Keira Knightley, and Kenneth Branagh, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Now, I did go see this in theaters, but was it as good as I remembered? It's been a while since I saw it, to be honest, and I watched it again last year to see if it was any good, but let's see how it goes today. Let's get into this movie. In London, we see a young Jack Ryan, played by Chris Pine, relaxing before class time at school as he sees on the TV on 9/11 happening as he joins the war and is there for 18 months as we move on that amount of months later and a missile hits the helicopter he was on and he gets a doctor and goes to a physical therapy for 8 months as he's recruited by Thomas Harper from the CIA and played by Kevin Costner, while he's training to walk again with Dr. Kathy Muller, played by Keira Knightley this time, as he's done with physical therapy as he starts to run while she's being transferred to a different station. And this first 10 minutes is all over the place for an origin story of a spy, as James Bond did it better in the remake of Casino Royale, which I'll review before No Time to Die ever comes out in October. Jack goes to New York City as Jack sets up a co-worker to go out on a date with a woman co-worker as the United Nations begins, as Jack meets an agent and tells him to go to Moscow, and as we see Jack and Kathy are a couple, and how did that happen without explanation? That doesn't make any sense. Kathy sees Jack had a movie ticket and asks him about it at dinner, which was rather cheesy. In Moscow, we meet the movie's bad guy named Victor. Let me see if I'm saying this right. Sheridan? I think I said that right, but if I didn't, please forgive me. Played by Kenneth Branagh, as we barely see his face until 2 minutes after we're introduced to him, as he meets with the Prime Minister of Russia. And at this point, I'm thinking, this movie is getting boring. And I gotta ask, are Jack and Kathy married, or do they not want to get married? Because I'm having problems with what the characters' arcs are in this movie. Jack gets to Moscow and is taken to the hotel into his room as the bodyguard who picked him up wants to kill him, as he's an assassin, of course. And this action is doing absolutely nothing for me, as James Bond had better action than this movie does, but are these movies about action with an exception of the next one? Because based on the trailer, it looks like an action movie, and the action in this movie looked a hell of a lot, and the new movie looked a hell of a lot better than that trailer than this movie offers. Jack goes out in Moscow while being followed by a taxi cab as he gets a call from Kathy, and they talk for a couple of minutes, and Jack meets Thomas while he's walking his dog, which is an interesting thing to bring in urgent matter, meaning as they walk and he leaves the dog, and I'm like, what is going to happen to that dog? I'm not going to try to think about that, as it doesn't really matter at this point, as Jack goes back to his room and sees the room all cleaned up with no dead body, which is the scene bored me half to death. Victor attends a funeral at a church while Jack goes to work and meets Victor at his building and gives Jack a file, and Jack offers to go to dinner with Victor at the restaurant across the street from Victor's building. And he brings up Kathy, not by name, but telling him his girlfriend has arrived to Moscow, and Jack finds Kathy in his hotel room, as when I first saw this, I thought she was working with the Russians. My money was on that because I never read the books, and based on the trailer, I remember that being that way, as Jack tells Kathy he's in the CIA, but luckily my guess was wrong by the end of the day, and I was sort of happy about that, but unfortunately it doesn't make me care for this plot. The characters in this movie, a kid stabs an FBI agent, and I don't get the scene because it goes absolutely nowhere except it's Victor's son. Jack has no choice but to get Kathy to go to dinner with him, and Victor, which this is painfully acted. It's a painfully acted scene at the dinner table with Jack, Kathy, and Victor, as this whole movie is acting, is painful. It's painfully bad. While at dinner, Jack goes to Victor's building to sneak around to hack into Victor's plan to destroy America and gets out safely while Kathy and Victor talk at the dinner table and is interrupted by his assistant, and he brings Kathy with him and shoots one of the bodyguards as Jack knows the attack will take place the next day, and none of this is exciting me as it's boring at its worst. Then Kathy gets captured by Victor's henchmen, and Jack goes after him to get her back while Victor gets in the car with her and Jack, and calls Jack and slaps Kathy, and it pisses him off. And Jack eventually catches up to Kathy and saves her, and they get on a plane and get out of Moscow alive, and they get back to America to capture the kid, who turns out to be Victor's son, which I brought up earlier. And I wish this movie explained it better than how I was told at this point, as I have 20 minutes of the movie left. And they learn he's in Pennsylvania to put a bomb in to explode in Pennsylvania, as well as all over America, and the FBI gets all over the place, as this is a messy movie and it's confusing the crap out of me. The FBI is evacuating the building in New York City as Jack sees a police truck getting away from the crime scene, and Jack goes after him and on his co-worker's motorcycle to go after the son as he puts it under the building in a sewer. And Jack fights the son while trying to turn off the bomb, but can't, as he drives it away from civilians, while the son tries to make it explode, and Jack gets out of the police truck with the son in it, as it explodes in the water as the son failed his father, Victor, as he's shot by the Prime Minister of Russia. Jack is in the hospital where Kathy works at as they comfort each other, and Jack goes in the White House meeting with the president, and I was glad the movie was over at this point, as this is the worst Tom Clancy adaptation to date, but we'll see how the new movie does next time. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.5 out of 10. This movie is all over the place, as this is a messy movie right off the bat. The acting is painful by the actors. This plot is weak, and I don't really care for these characters. This movie didn't excite me. Like, the action is not exciting, whereas this is the worst Tom Clancy adaptation of them all. But we'll see how the new movie does next time, like I said earlier. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with Tom Clancy's Without Remorse. And until next time, sorry, Mr. President, I don't dance.